West Michigan.
At West Michigan, people are like that.
If I said where I was actually from, no one would know the town. So
All the people in Grand Haven would know.
all one person on this call.
All the people in Michigan would know, like Patrick Collins and myself.
I feel like most people don't know about Grand Haven. Like
Really?
Grand Rapids for sure. Yeah, you might know more because you're a boater and stuff, and there's the Grand River and the channel and all that. I don't know, but
My boat doesn't travel down that far. That's a long
sure.
ways around for me.
but you're
You
still
know it
more
in
aware
Chicago.
of the waterways than most.
Yeah,
folks.
you know, I would think that maybe people would think that it's part of Indiana or Illinois. It's like so far down in that corner.
Well, it's not quite that far down.
It's the wrong side of the lake for Illinois.
Yeah, but Indiana comes right up across the bottom there. Well, Chicago's on the bottom of the lake.
Right.
Yeah.
But it's on the west side, not the east side.
Okay, Ted.
But if you're not from Chicago, you can forgive people for not knowing that.
I may live in rural place now, but I'm originally from Chicago. So yeah.
Sure, Grand Haven is right near Muskegon, which has a luge track up there that you could just go to.
It's a blast. I love their
It is.
luge track. We've done it multiple times. It is so much fun.
Yep.
And
I
that's
read
a,
about
that's a,
that last winter. I was going to take my nephews, but I didn't with COVID and everything. Maybe this winter we'll have to do it.
oh, definitely.
What
It's
what
way,
was
way
that?
fun.
A
Yeah.
luge track?
Luge.
Oh.
Yeah, you can do the luge. It's also just a great state park in general. It's right on the water. They get massive amounts of snow. They have great cross-country ski tracks, both the traditional tracked as well as the skate style, and a huge ice rink.
Yeah, you could skate through the forest there, if I remember right.
Yep, and they have lighted night trails. We usually make a pilgrimage to Muskegon once a year just to go to that park in the winter. And if we're lucky, the snowy owls will be there as well.
They should have recorded that. That would have been great marketing for them.
Yeah.
Make sure you hit Pentwater in the summer.
Prince Tinarello, I have not seen you in a long time. It's nice to see your face.
It's nice to be seen. Yeah, I haven't been around, and I got really sick in March, and call it 3 weeks before the finish line of a vaccine, which was heartbreaking. And aside from going to a couple of peer group meetings, I haven't had the guts to go anywhere. So it's good to be seen. Maybe next year.
All right.
I hope you're all better now.
It's been a long road, my friends. Doctors galore, and yeah, an ambulance ride and 3 ER visits was not fun.
Wow.
You.
But 7 months later, I'm candidly finally feeling myself again, which is good.
Good. Glad to hear it.
Well, I look forward to seeing all of you in the real world. I want to see anybody in the real world.
I'm ready for a beer in a lobby bar,
There you
Carl,
go. Absolutely.
and some pictures of grumpy old man face photos. There you go. Exactly. Those. Just like that.
Carl hopes that you owe him a beer. He hopes everyone owes him a beer.
Oh.
That's his life
When I-
plan, you know.
When I die, I want every one of you to owe me a beer.
He made me try Crown Royal for the first time ever. Like, was incredulous that I'd never had Crown before.
I'm a
And
little
made me in
incredulous
the-
myself.
And the Hilton made me have one with him. And yeah,
You loved it.
and I loved it. It was delicious.
Vince is my example of a great customer service person. He got his training in the Marriott organization. And when you sit in the lobby, he can tell you things that are going on that you would never notice in 1,000 years. So
It's a blessing and a curse that I've worked in the hotel business for 13 years when you travel now, because I know what to look for.
Yeah, I've noticed that you also have very high expectations where the rest of us are just kind of like, it's a hotel.
Yeah. Yeah, I do have higher expectations for what to me should just be common sense. There's a couple of things, and there's one thing in the restaurant business, having worked in restaurants for years too. Stop asking me if I'm working on it. Are you still working on that? No, I'm not a chipmunk. Ask me if I'm still enjoying my dinner, right? Are you still enjoying your dinner, right? Don't say just one. Yeah, I'm a loser. I have no friends. I'm just one tonight at dinner, right? Don't do those things. I could give you a whole list of things of like do's and don'ts.
I may interview you for a book. All right. We have over 50 people, Amy. Why don't we kick it off?
Why don't we kick it off? All right. Well, thank you all for showing up for our very first membership meeting of this great new organization. I am so excited that we finally have an organization that can represent us as MSPs out in the world and have a voice for ourselves, because there's a lot of things that are happening out there that we have no unified voice on, and it is going to cause us big problems in the near future if we can't get our act together. So my high goals for this organization is that we do get our act together, that we have a more professional industry, and that we have a unified voice to go forth into the world and make ourselves known for what we actually do, as opposed to what they might assume that we do, which is never a good thing. So right now, I am pleased to introduce you to somebody you might already know, but he is a very important man, Carl Policek. He has been appointed the executive director of this organization. And truth be told, it was mainly Carl's idea that we launched this organization. So it's only fitting that he is our first executive director. So please welcome Carl.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Just a note, this meeting is being recorded and it will be posted. So if you don't want your face or your voice to be recorded, then you need to mute or hide yourself. Just so you know, we respect whatever you choose to do. Everybody joins muted. If you want to chat, we will have the chat open the whole time, and Kara is diligently monitoring that. I want to make sure everybody knows that we are doing a lot of work, and so part of what we wanted to do with this meeting is just let you know that we're not doing nothing. A lot of the work that has gone on has been outside of the public view, just because it takes a huge amount of effort to get something like this going. And we go back and forth with the analogy, but it's sort of like getting the train moving. It takes a whole lot of people. So we have a board of directors, and Amy's going to introduce them. We have several committees, and we actually have a committee to help us figure out which committee we should create next. Many of you have volunteered, and today you're going to meet some of the people that you can contact, and we are continuing to improve our processes for communication and posting up information. So I want to just give you a sense of what we've been up to. The committees have been meeting mostly every week. There are people on this call, and I mentioned earlier, Amy and Heather, there are several people on this call that go to 2 or 3 meetings a week and sometimes more for this organization. And so there's a huge amount of effort going out, and the board has just literally just jumped in with both feet and is meeting every week, and that can't continue forever, but we absolutely are blessed to have so many people with so much talent. And so we'll have more on the agenda for today. The agenda is posted in the chat, but with that, let me introduce you to the president of our board of directors, Amy Babinchak, who is, in addition to being a very longtime friend of mine, is one of the most talented and successful managed service providers in the world. She's Microsoft MVP for, I don't know, 70 years, something like that. And Amy and I are a good combo because we do everything exactly the opposite. In one board meeting, Larry Mandelberg was going down a list of things that could be considered a profession. At the same time, Amy said, it's all of those. And I said, it's none of those. It's like, okay, now you understand where we come from. And you know, it is that difference of opinion and different approaches that brings power to this group. And, you know, it's okay to disagree with people as long as we do it respectfully. So with that, Amy, welcome and thank you for your service.
Thank you, Carl. You know, the key thing about Carl and I've teased Carl for years that I disagree with everything he says. And, you know, but the thing is, we appreciate that there are many ways to be successful in this industry. And so I think it's important to recognize that all of our membership too is not going to be exactly like the other. It would be a shame if to create just a whole March of the Clones. We want everybody to be successful in their own way, but have our unifying force be that, you know, we are all in the same profession together. So what I'd like to do now is to actually introduce you to who our board members are. Now, these board members were all appointed. We will have elections later in the year. When Carl said that this is a lot of work, because what we are doing is setting up the infrastructure for a truly national organization. So there's a lot of stuff to do to make that happen. So here are the folks on the board that are getting that underway. Chris Barber. Chris is the owner and self-proclaimed chief nerd at Cheaper Than a Geek. They're an MSP that is about to celebrate 22 years in business just out of DC and Baltimore. And they specialize in the smaller side of the SMB space. Rayanne Buccianico is the owner of ABC Solutions, an MSP accounting expert. She's also a PSA consultant and podcaster, an M&A expert, an author, instructor, and speaker. And she has won awards for her work in community involvement from every organization that matters in our industry. Jeff Grenier is an expert in MSP operations and service delivery. He's working in IT for 19 years, owning and operating an MSP for 15 of those years, has a vast knowledge of the industry and client support. Heather Johnson is the co-founder and COO of Gazinta. She's created successful marketing, sales, and support department in her first 3 years there. And prior to coming to Gazinta, she was an HR director and was the lead organizer for 2 events at the White House. Larry Mandelberg owns Mandelberg Consulting, is a 5th generation owner with a total of 13 businesses under his belt. That's impressive, Larry. Larry mentors SMB leadership teams. His book, Businesses Don't Fail, They Commit Suicide, explains why businesses fail. With his partner, Nancy, of 14 years, Larry has a Drexel MBA and serves as board chairman for Innovative Education Management. Robert Patterson recently joined our board. He is the director of sales and marketing at Progressive Computing. He's a great community guy out of New York, has been in our channel for 18 years, and he is the founder of the New York Small Business Server Group that's been running for many years now. Those are our board members, and these folks are extremely talented and extremely hardworking. I'm really, really glad to have them in our organization. So Carl, I'm going to turn it back to you, and you can see on the agenda that we have a poll coming up.
There we go. I have to unmute myself. Carol, will you launch the poll, please? So we want to know, we have a few polls, and the first one is, what's the most important thing that we can do for you? You know, this association, we started with some specific goals and things that we wanted to set up, but we want to make sure that there isn't something else that you need that we can provide. And if you choose other, just throw it in the chat. And while that's up, let me talk a bit about some things that are going on. So very soon, we're going to be making some big changes to the website, which will include posting up minutes from the meetings. And that's basically going to be a resource in case people are interested. We do post up these meeting recordings. One of the committees is working on, the formation committee is working on sort of figuring out when we can set up practical elections. Speculation right now is it'll probably be in September of 2022. And the way that our charter, I guess, is written is that the people serve on a board until the next election. And so the people who we have now have been appointed, basically. What we do with committees, what we have done to get things started is to try to find somebody to be a committee chair and then encourage them to go get additional people. We do need some more committee members, specifically for finance. And we don't need people who are like financial wizards. We need people who are willing to say, I will look and help put together a profit and loss, help put together a budget of what we think we can spend money on. Some of that money needs to come from additional resources. So we have membership, which the board set at $100. And I hope everyone here is a member, a paid member, but if you're not, I encourage you to go and convert to a paid membership on the site. And then, one of the people that works for me has been contacting people and getting in their letters of rec and so forth so that you can become a full-fledged paid member. To sit on a board or to vote in the elections, you have to be a paid member. So we want to make sure people have some stake in this. The board has, I mentioned, been meeting weekly, and it has been quite a struggle for some people. And I completely acknowledge that, we're adding an hour or sometimes two to people's schedules, and that's difficult. Eventually that'll be a little less frequent, but the board has also taken on the chore of trying to figure out, we want to come up with a vision, mission, and value statements that really reflect what we want to do here. And sometimes we get pretty nitpicky about the meaning of this word and that word, but it matters in the long run because we don't want a mission statement that gets printed out and put into a drawer and never seen again. We want a mission statement that people can look at and say, that is exactly what this industry needs to do. That's where we need to go. And so it's a fair amount of hard work on that front. And I think we could probably end the poll at this point and show the results. So the legislative advocacy is clearly something that needs to be done. And just yesterday, CISA put out some more guidelines for responding to cybersecurity incidents, and they put out a couple of different playbooks. So, it's just another example that, the people on Facebook and Reddit who say, I don't see any legislation, I don't know what you're talking about. It is absolutely coming. And we, in some ways, it's almost as if we may be a little bit late to the game, but we need to do that. Second in the poll makes perfect sense, elevate the standards of ethics across our profession. That is huge. And the education and certification piece. Now the talking points, I know that seems, so not a lot of people saw that as a super high priority. And it may be that it was your second. But part of what we want to do is be able to give you resources so that when there's a news story, the next time there's an incident that hits the media, we want to make sure that you are all empowered to have some talking points to literally say, Well, here's why people would outsource their IT. Here's why you would use these powerful tools. Here's why you would do this. And, eventually, if we have the money, I would love to see us produce some video and audio so that your local reporter can download that, make a story, and contact you for the 7-second soundbite from the local IT service provider who is actually, serving that community. And if we can do that with a fair amount of consistency, then the voice of the small IT service provider will be heard. I love Microsoft, don't get me wrong, but Microsoft has their voice. They can be in any discussion they want to be in. And the same with, Dell and HP and Intel and everybody else, as well as the really big managed service providers. If you got big money, then you have a voice. Well, most of us, we have just enough money to feed our family and, guarantee our retirement, and a handful of people own Teslas, but we don't have billions of dollars to spend on lobbying. So it's a step. One of the things that the board decided early on is that they want to make sure that this is a bottom-up organization. So there's a little irony in that you start by appointing people and then creating a more democratic process. But, as Eric put in the chat, that's the way it goes. Heather Johnson was appointed as the liaison between the board of directors and the committees. So if the board says, hey, we want to standardize on this, she makes sure that committee chairs get that information. Committee chairs then send requests to the board through her, and it's just a way for those things to move. So I want to thank Heather for that. And, one of the reasons we see each other all the time is that we seem to always be in meetings, sometimes 2 in the same day. So that's a huge thing. Another decision that the board made is that there is 1 vote per company. So if you have an organization and you have, let's say, 10 employees, we would love all of those employees to be members, but only 1 would need to be a paid member and have a vote. So what we don't want, again, is for large organizations to come in and say, we're going to register 50 people and we're going to take 50 votes and we're going to take over this organization. That was never our intention, and the board has sort of solidified that their goal is that it's 1 vote per company, and that way, one of the first things that people said online was that the big companies are just going to dominate, and I think that simple move takes care of that. Of course, we're happy to discuss that as well. The board did adopt the bylaws for the organization. And if those are not yet on the website, they will be soon. Again, we have a resources section that we're building, so it will show up eventually. All right. And with that, I'll turn it back to Amy, but let's go ahead and launch the poll. I'll stop this and whoops. Yeah, I'm going to stop. I'm going to not click anything. I'm going to let Kara do her job. And let's launch the poll on communications. Amy, take it away.
All right, thanks, Carl, for that. It was a really big, important thing for me that this be a grassroots organization and that we truly represent the small MSPs and that we don't get taken over by vendors, even though that we may need their assistance in helping our organization. We want this to be led by the committees and what is actually needed in our community rather than to have something dictated out to us. I don't know if you all saw the message going around from Google asking you to sign up for their new group so that they can represent our community. I do not trust Google or Microsoft or Accenture or any of these giant corporations to truly represent what we are as MSPs. And we've been doing a lot of work in the committees to make sure that that happens. And it's a really, I think, a critical component and something that makes us different than other organizations that are out there today. So let me introduce you to our committee chairs. We have a formation committee, which is chaired by Brett Erickson of Passkey Technology. We're going to allow each of the committee chairs to give a couple minute spiel on what it is that they're working on. So if we can get Brett up and unmuted to talk about his community for a moment.
Great. Thanks, Amy. Everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Hey, Vince, that sounds like quite a journey. We're very happy that you made it through okay. Yes, so I'm Brett Erickson. I'm the chair of the Formation Committee. I own Passkey Technology up in Minnesota. Actually, Minneapolis, we're a first ring suburb, Golden Valley, and we're a small 10-person MSP, been around since '91, and I'm very happy to be involved in this organization. Our industry's reputation is very important to all of us, and I'm guessing we're all believers that a rising tide lifts all boats. So right off the bat, I'd love to acknowledge the other regulars at our committee meetings. Diana Giles of Skyline IT Management from Oklahoma, Jason Thomas of JTAG Solutions from Illinois, and David Yates of Geeks R Us from Florida. We're also usually joined by board members Heather Johnson of Gozinta and Carl, and then sometimes Amy peeks in on us as well. So what does the Formation Committee do, and what are we up to? So we've been meeting weekly, actually, mostly because there's a lot of work to do to get the right committees in place. It's a critical piece of getting this organization launched. So quite simply, the Formation Committee, we're working on what kind of committees the organization needs and in what priority order we need to create them. So we basically come up with a scope and some guidelines off of an idea for a committee we need, and then we send that off to the board as recommendations. So to date, we have formed, obviously, the Formation Committee, the Legislative Committee, Finance Committee, Marketing Committee, and most likely next is a Membership Committee. So we also defined the committee's general rules, guidelines, and standards for the committees, and then send them off to the board as recommendations, and also involved in recommending the election details and process and timing and get those off to the board. So eventually we see ourselves, after committees are formed, as migrating or moving from a formation committee to a governance committee. And then I'm glad Carl touched on this. When referencing, submitting to the board, and we send this off to the board for approval, Carl does talk a lot in our meetings about the board's preference for this to be a bottom-up organization. So, and committees having a large say in direction. So this is a great segue to volunteering to being on a committee. What bottom-up means for you is that you can have a lot of influence in the success of this organization. So, and I will defer to Amy, Carl, and crew on how best to volunteer. So there's plenty of opportunity, and we would love the help. And that's all I got, unless we have questions.
Great, thank you, Brett. Yeah, it should also be noted that one of the additional decisions that we made as a board is that no board member could be a chair of a committee. So, we're really taking this bottom-up thing quite seriously. And the Formation Committee is arguably the most important committee that we have right now. They are designing this organization. So we do need to get involved. We need you to get involved. We want as many members involved in our committees as we can possibly get. So now let me introduce you to the Legislative Committee and tell you what they're all about. Dennis Wilson is the chair of that committee of DWP Information Architects out in California. And I'm going to let Dennis tell you all about what the Legislative Committee has been involved in.
Thank you, Amy. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you great.
Great. I really do appreciate the opportunity to outline the real work that the Legislative Committee has achieved in the last several weeks. Currently, we have the following folks on the committee. Besides myself, we have the vice chair and secretary of the committee, Keith Nelson, who's at Vistem Solutions in Southern California. We have Heather Johnson as the board liaison, Amy Babinchak as I don't know, whatever she does at the time. Carl Policek, of course, drops in most of the time. Brett Erickson, that you all just met from Passkey Technologies in Minnesota, and Ted Giesler of Cypress Consulting Group in Illinois. So we've got basically 6 of us currently. However, we could use a few more active committee members, and you can volunteer on the NSITSP website, or just give me a call and we'll work it out. The purpose of the legislative committee is to put together resources needed for our service provider members to actively and knowledgeably participate in conversations with state legislators all over the US. Our goals currently are 4. We need to get to know who the state legislators are in the legislative committees that are driving or will drive the regulation and laws that'll affect the IT service providers. Second is to provide educational materials to help these state legislators understand the background and the issues that are or will affect these regulations and laws. Third, to provide educational materials to help the society members understand how to present and how to discuss the educational materials with the state legislators and what are the key points that we need to promote. And fourth, to provide assistance to the society members to help them achieve a knowledgeable and respected position vis-a-vis the state legislators. And so far, what we've been able to do is we've established a prioritized list of goals and objectives to quickly achieve our goals so that the society members have the tools to use in discussions with their state legislators. We've established a weekly schedule for the work and a procedure that the committee members are comfortable with. We've also we've created a fact document that will, or that does describe who, what, and why our IT service providers, one of the key our legislators' key constituents, and what their concerns are. We should have that completed by next week. Next, we created are in the process of creating a guideline or an outline of the typical state legislator, a glossary of key terms, who the key players in the state, what committees should be targeted, and we should have that started next week. And then we expect that after that, we will have we'll create a battle card and a description of the personas involved in those discussions, so that the society members will understand who it is it's playing, how it is they expect to be talked to, and all that kind of stuff that we've gotten so used to in the sales process. We expect to get a preview to the committee members within the next several weeks. And additionally, we coordinate with other committees to create a marketing and other types of materials. I'm very proud of this committee. We've started from the ground up, and we're now actively getting our priorities knocked out. And one of the things that we are painfully aware of is that some of the legislatures and other key participants are actively working on regulations that we will have no input on. We are scrambling to try to catch up and represent the IT service providers efficiently and thoroughly, and we're going to do what we can. Thank you.
Thanks, Dennis. Yeah, Dennis, in our committee, which I'm most passionately involved in this committee myself, we are focusing on building out materials that is going to empower all the members of this organization to be active in the legislation process, because we're going to need everybody. Right now, we've got a situation where we have politicians that are woken up to the idea of cybersecurity, and they all want to be the one that created the solution to the problem. And the legislation is coming forward fast and furious, at both at the state level and the federal level. At the federal level, in the House, there were 321 bills created for cybersecurity regulations in the first half of this year. One of them has pushed forward to the Senate, which is troubling. And it has the most screwed up definition of MSP that you've ever seen. And if that becomes legislation, that will become the words that define who we are. And so we have to get ourselves involved really rapidly here. So we're trying to fire up as quickly as we possibly can. So now let me introduce you to Rayanne Buccianico. She is a member of the board. She is acting chair of the committee because their finance and fundraising committee is brand new. And so Rayanne, tell us about your hopes and dreams for this committee.
So thank you, everyone. And I'm Rayanne Buccianico, and I'm currently acting chair for the Finance Committee. And so that's because up until about a few minutes ago, I was the only one on the committee. So thanks to Ken Iconos for volunteering, and also Eric Anthony, who has offered to step up and help out. What we're looking to do is raise funds for the organization so that the other committees can get out there and spend what they need to spend in order to do the jobs, right? So, you know, like the legislative committee and the marketing committee, they need dollars to do their jobs. And we also, what we really want to do is start to meet now, build a budget for 2022, build a membership drive, or, you know, some sort of forecasting for how many dollars we're going to get in versus how many dollars we're going to need to spend out. So as you might imagine, budgeting and the finances is kind of in my wheelhouse, but I cannot be the chairperson of this committee since I'm on the executive board already, but I'd like to hold it together until we can get a full-fledged committee together. I will be filing the 501c6 application with the Internal Revenue Service before the end of this month, so that we can be officially recognized as an organization. And all of your dues will be tax deductible as business expenses. And so far, that's all I really have for the committee. Anybody out there that wants to help us, you know, increase membership, increase some fundraising, maybe get some vendors to donate dollars to our cause, we could really, really use your help. So don't be shy, step right up, you know, and help us out.
Okay, thank you, Rayanne. Our next committee up is the Marketing and Communications Committee, which is headed up by Tim Golden of the Compliancy Guys.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much, Brett, Dennis, and Rayanne, for those great introductions of your committees. And I'm glad to see that yours are really starting to take off and take foundation here. As the newly appointed marketing chair, I just dropped the membership application in chat. We could use some more help. It would be beneficial if we could get a couple of more people as part of our team to try to bring forth the message of what we're doing here to not only the MSP community at large, but the general overall community around making sure that we are staying up to our standards and we're following what we want to believe in and we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. I'm going to be brief because I don't have a lot of members to introduce and a lot of outlines and goals yet as the newly appointed member, but yeah, apply there. The link is in chat. So looking forward to working with some of you here on bringing forth our great message and what we're trying to do here with the society. Thanks, Tim Golden, Compliancy Guys.
Thanks, Tim. Yeah, it's not that Tim was newly appointed, it's that the committee is brand new itself. So this was one of the first acts of the formation committee, was to create this one. And it's be a great one to join because they are going to be developing, you know, not only the image of the organization, but also the standardization of how we communicate to the world, what organization is about, what MSPs are about, what our industry is about. So they have a very critical role to play, and I look forward to see what they're going to do. So Cara, I'm going to turn it back over to you. And I think, Cara, we have a new poll, we can probably close that one and then get up the poll, the next poll.
Did we share the results of the communications poll?
There they are.
Okay, so thank you very much. So semi-monthly seems pretty good. I'm thinking that we will do a monthly newsletter, and then we have to figure out the frequency of meetings. Stuff like this. This is a big one just because we have so many things to introduce you to. But I want to really, I'm hoping to help, work with Tim and his committee to figure out like how can we have a regular cadence and so forth. So let's go ahead and start the next poll, please. And while you're looking at that, this is about education and what educational topics would be the most of most interest to you. I want to talk about several other things. So one of them is, and Amy, just jump in whenever you choose to here. Not that I can stop you, but so paid membership. So right now, paid membership, we only have one level, which is paid. So there's an unpaid level, I guess, but in terms of a paid membership, part of what the formation committee is going to look at, and maybe this will get handed off to a membership committee, is, should we have levels of membership and what would that look like? And so Ken, Kanos, and some others have been discussing in the chat about, how many votes would make sense for an organization and so forth. And we're happy to have that discussion. And when we get to the Q&A section, obviously people are welcome to discuss that. But we also need to look at vendor memberships and what the role of vendors is. And part of that depends on the committees working together. The finance committee's got to figure out how much money we need. If you just like pick a number out of the top of your head, do we need 50,000? Do we need 100,000? If we're going to do lobbying and hire some administrative staff, do we need 250,000? Like, what do we need? And we don't really have a handle on that yet. And so we have to come up with the budget and then figure out, okay, what's the role? There are several vendors have contacted me and said, what can we do? And so part of what the board has discussed is that, it doesn't have to be money. If a vendor says, we can give you a booth at our show, we can give you some marketing materials, we can help you with this or that. There's many pieces of various budgets besides, spending money to get your logo on a website. So we're very open to that. And several vendors have, contacted me, and I've had a few conversations. Many of them, the larger ones anyway, are very interested in getting their logo out there. And part of what I've said from the start is, I don't see this as an opportunity for you to give us money and have another webinar. That's not filling a void in any way. And so I don't see that as part of what this organization is going to do. And while we believe that the vendors are critical to this community, I mean, that like literally there is no community without the vendors, right? There's no channel without the vendors. But this is an IT service provider centric organization. And so I'm happy to have discussions, and maybe at some point we will have a meeting of interested vendors to see what role they would like to play. Because, they come to me and say, well, there have to be gives and gets, so make a proposal. I'm like, oh, okay, that's not really very helpful, right? We do want to figure out exactly the kind of thing, what role that they can play to help us get our message out, to get this education out, to get in front of state legislators. One of the things that developed early on that Dennis was talking about was that as soon as we started just casually talking to state legislators, the first question was, do you provide educational materials for small businesses? And we're like, well, we don't yet. But if that's the first need that you have, we can make that happen. And that's the kind of thing that vendors might be able to help with. So there's that. Second topic is membership drive. So we're now that we have a membership committee, or we're forming a membership committee, one of the first things that it's going to do is to try to get people to help promote all of what we're doing. And so that will evolve. And again, if people have input on what that would look like, we would love to have you involved. It will probably be the communications committee that will get that kicked off and be the public face of that. I hope you got a sense from the committee reports that there truly is an overwhelming amount of work to do. You know, when Dennis was halfway through his thing, I felt like saying, enough already, you're going to overwhelm people, you know. So there's that. Related to all of this is that we've set up several social media pages, which are not intended to be the conversation area, right? So we do have forums on our site, and the communications committee is going to have to figure out exactly, you know, which places we communicate with each other and have these public discussions. But the Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn pages are intended to be sort of broadcast areas where, with luck, we will have people who volunteer to track things going on in the association, and let people know about those and use those as a way to get people to loop back and join us and participate, whether it's in committees or other things, but spread the word about this association. And then, of course, we need to have some kind of fundraising. And again, that may be looping back to the vendors. It may also be from members themselves. Several of you, and I'm extremely grateful, several of you have donated money above and beyond the $100 cost of membership, and we absolutely appreciate that. And so that can continue, that will continue. Another topic that has come up is the, what do we do about international communities? There are, I at least saw Canadians on here. I don't know if there's anybody here from the UK, but we've had people contact us from Australia, New Zealand, a couple of places in Africa, a couple of places in Europe. It's like people want to join this organization. And so, right now we're focused on making this happen in North America, but we will, at some point this will spread a little further. If nothing else, part of what we have committed to is transparency. There's some discussion about, putting up documents for people to see what the committees are up to and so forth. We absolutely are going to do all of that. And as I said, some changes to the website are coming soon. And that'll be a place where you'll be able to see exactly what's going on here and ask questions and have them answered. We do have forums within the website already, and some people have used those. They're not very active. One of the problems with having so many means of communication in the IT industry is that there are 50 social media outlets, and everybody uses something different, and some people refuse to use one and some refuse to use another. I'm just like everybody else. I refuse to use some, and I always use others. So we have to figure out how to communicate with everybody across all of that. And finally, one of the next things that the board's going to do after they finalize the mission, vision, and value statements is to come up with a solid code of ethics. And I have a sample up on the site that just came out of my my original 9 pillars document. But the board wants to come up with something that we can say, this is a code of ethics that we stand for, and ask members to post it on their websites and talk about it amongst themselves, talk about it with their clients, and be held responsible. if you follow the news, some of what's going on with CISA is that somebody in that government organization is convinced that MSPs are regularly not doing what they are telling their clients they're doing. They're taking money and not delivering resources. And it is becoming like the focus of how we are going to be regulated. There is no question that that is where this is going. And part of what we can do to fight that is to say, well, wait a minute, there are a whole bunch of IT service providers who do exactly what they say they're going to do, who document what they're doing, who have a transparent system, who let clients have access to their own passwords and their own data, but we need to make sure that we're visible about that and we hold each other accountable. So that's also a piece of where this goes. Yes,
Well, one of the really eye-opening things was a recent document that CISA put out as a guidance to businesses. And in there, they had a checklist of things that you can do to protect yourself from your MSP. That's how low the reputation of our industry has become. And, if we have reputable organizations like that putting out those sorts of materials, that does not speak well for our industry. And we all know that we've had trouble distinguishing ourselves or being seen as distinct from the inscrutable people that are in our industry. We all know them and we have derogatory names for them, but we know that they're out there and they are not being seen as different from those of us that are responsible. And so that is an important thing that we need to address. And that is really part of what the code of ethics, and honestly, this whole list of things that is in the education poll that's open now, that's what that's all about.
Yeah, it's interesting in the board discussion about mission, we go back and forth on, the word professional and what that means. And while the word professional isn't a good fit for a mission statement, we all sort of have some sense of what we think that means. And I think we have an amazing amount of agreement on it. It's just a matter of, okay, so turn that into actions, turn that into visible activities that another person can see. What does that look like? And so, and again, I use the word transparency. Part of what we want to do and we're working on is to make this as transparent as possible. And I'm meeting with Kara tomorrow or Friday about several things, but one of them is, I want to make sure that we know exactly what we're doing on the website, and probably within a week, we will have the minutes all up for all the meetings from now on. And then, that's a matter of just making sure those processes are in place. But everything takes time. And on one hand, I am a little frustrated that this thing doesn't move at the speed of light. On the other hand, we have done amazing amount of work because we've only existed for 3 months. So, all right. Anything else? Let's go ahead and end that poll and share the results. Anything else we need to cover before we open it for Q&A, Amy?
No, I think that we've covered it, and we did it in the amount of time that we wanted to, which is awesome. So what we plan to do for the next 30 minutes is to leave it open for Q&A, to really hear from you guys what you're thinking about this space and our role and accomplishments, and how you can help us move this organization forward. So I think at this point we'll take stuff out of the chat and just have a conversation. Also, but before people start leaving in droves, which I hope you won't, thank you for attending this first meeting as well. I think we really wanted to introduce you to the organization and appreciate that you have early jumped on and said, yes, I want to be part of this, and that you're here today. That really means a lot, and it is good to see that. I think that we're on the right track, and as a community, we know what we need to do. We just have to get busy and do it.
All righty. With that, I'm trying to figure out how do I remove all the pins. I get if everybody goes to the gallery view, then we get rid of all of the spotlights.
Did we share the results for the education poll yet? Can we do that? There we go. Yeah, so the compliance and regulation piece is seems to be the main thing that we need to educate on. Legal insurance and risk management, that is a closely related topic in my mind. So very good to see that.
Very cool. All right. And I guess we're done, right? With the polls.
We're done with the polls. So let's take a look at what's in the chat, which has been very active, which I love. I love to see people participating.
So, and for future meetings, in case you guys don't know it, you can go into your settings for Zoom and set it to be 7x7. So I have 49 of you on the screen instead of 25. So you're slightly smaller, but I see more of you. So who wants to talk about what? Is there anything we missed that you want to chat about?
Well, if we look in the chat, Stephen Faulkner says he doesn't trust Google or the others either. And I think that's, safe to say. I hate that when an issue comes up that, the legislators, if they don't know anybody, they'll be like, hey, we're talking about this cybersecurity stuff. Let's get Microsoft on the line. And it just doesn't fit in with small business. They're not going to have the same reality scope that we have. So we need to make sure that they're contacting the right people. And the only way to do that is to tell them, hey, when you have this kind of thing coming up and you need some input or you need help on developing that legislation, or you need to know what the definitions of this or that are, please don't Google it, literally or figuratively. Come and ask us.
Well, and part of my job as the executive director is to make sure that website, when people Google the definition of something, we're on it. I would love to have a whole strategy around that, just because we need to be the voice of what these things are for small business. Ultimately that is one of the goals.
So I think one of the things that I'd like to get out, so I'm a relatively new guy in this realm, in MSSP type realm, and but 30 years of experience in the military, then Silicon Valley, then big corporate powerhouses. Relatively new, been doing this about 9 months, and one of the things that's hard is getting mastermind groups together. I think that we should be able to facilitate facilitate that some from this group of professionals who are all in the same industry and want to do this ethically.
Well, there are many mastermind groups. I think if we did something, it would really need to be very focused on the specific topics we cover. In terms of general, like success mastermind groups, there are dozens. There's probably 20 people on here who could, share the groups that they're in. I know, many people have them.
Yeah, I get that they're all over the place. I'm talking about, sharing experiences in the group as well. Not necessarily developing a specific mastermind group. I participate in one that's kind of general business owners, but I use that term kind of broadly as a think tank for certain things and lessons learned.
Well, certainly discussing how we approach problems and how we respond to this legislator or that news media or whatever. I don't know about anybody else. I've mentioned this several times and I haven't really had a lot of feedback, but I am very frustrated about how the news media cover these cybersecurity incidents. Just without any knowledge, just waving their hand. Well, clearly they're not very good at what they do. It's like, clearly you're not very informed about this topic.
Yeah, we can all be really good at what we do and still have one of our clients experience a cybersecurity incident, and I do think it's important that they know that and that they don't necessarily immediately assume that that's a black mark on our industry. There is there are a huge number now of international crime organizations that are developed just to thwart the good work that we're trying to do. Right? So, we as small businesses are ourselves up against overwhelming force. And I think that it would be better for us if it were put out that way, that we are out there doing everything that we can do to keep our clients safe, but sometimes bad things are going to happen.
Right.
One thing I wanted to call out in the chat is there was a bit of discussion about the one vote policy and the paid membership thing. So, and I see that kind of a cool discussion. Kenneth brought it up, and then there was a little back and forth, and Kenneth says he was kind of thinking out loud, and he can sort of see the value. The thing about, we don't want large organizations to take advantage of smaller organizations, to have it become a lopsided thing. If you have been in this industry for a while, you've seen that happen in other organizations in our industry, where either the vendors end up being the leading voice, or the larger MSPs end up being the larger voice. And actually, in our industry, most MSPs are small. And when I say MSP, I'm encompassing IT service provider, VAR, MSSP, whatever you want to call yourself, the organizations out there serving the community. We're in general all types of consulting firms, and consulting firms are mostly small in any industry you go to. And so we want to make sure that the small firms have just as much a voice, because they're just as important to their customers as the big firms are. And that is a key component of who we are, and who I think we're going to be going into the future.
Larry, you had a comment? You're muted. Larry, you're muted.
Sorry. The education poll had business operations low. It wasn't one of the top two. I don't think it was at the bottom, but it was low. And I'm just curious, how many of you on this call are satisfied with your level of sales, profitability, and organizational size? This kind of fits in with what Amy was talking about. There are a lot of business people who don't want to have a large business. They want to have a small, intimate organization. And I'm just wondering if that low level of importance of business operations education is a reflection of your success, or of the lack of desire to grow and become a larger organization, or something else. Does anybody have any comments on that?
I have to say, my impression is that there's plenty of that education provided by me, Amy, Eric Simpson, many others, right? And that this organization doesn't really fill a void by providing that specific kind of education. That's my suspicion. Yeah, Patrick said I have organizations and partners for that subject. I didn't mean to cut off conversation, but
No, thanks. Like I said, or for some other reason, I appreciate the insight.
So what do folks think about the one vote per organization? Is that, I mean,
that's perfectly reasonable. And not unusual in an organization like that, or like this. Then I have another vein we can go off on when you're ready.
We're totally ready.
Sorry, just on that, I'd like to hear the reasons that you would want more than one vote per organization. Devil's advocate, because I personally, I think one vote per organization makes the most sense. It's the business owners that have the stake in this whole thing, not necessarily the employees, but the employees are part of the industry and they're, should have a voice to some degree. I'm just curious, like, again, I'm for the one vote per organization, but what is the value of having more than one vote per organization? Is there an argument there?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen anything in the chat where anybody said any different, where they thought that.
Well, one person had said, and I'm not going to scroll up and try to find it, but that, if you got two partners who disagree on something, who gets the vote? And, I guess I sort of feel like you should never have only two partners. You should have three partners and then you get to decide. But,
or definitely no 50-50s on partnerships.
Yeah. Somebody should be 51%.
Right, but I think that's an internal organizational thing to figure out. You guys have one vote, figure out what it needs to be.
Yeah, so Larry says some large organizations might want one vote for each department, and that's exactly what we don't want, I think. Right?
I think that there's value in recognizing that a lot of IT pros get their start working for other firms, right? That's how I got started let's not say how many years ago, too many years ago.
Years ago.
And so allowing those individuals to grow in their own way, in their own time, and still have a voice in the industry that they plan on making a career, being part of those decisions and discussions, and I think is key. And I think having the option, if you choose to, and that's kind of where I was going later in the chat about maybe an entity-based membership that doesn't necessarily afford additional voting rights, but maybe allows the other company members to be part of committees and have a more active role than that of the designated speaker for that entity within our organization.
So that's a great idea.
But I do agree
membership committee
philosophically with one vote per organization, because we need to make sure that we're focused on the present here and now and making the impact that we need to make in order to continue succeeding.
Yeah, I think for things like elections, it would still be one vote per organization, but the membership committee might come up with some clever way of saying that your employees can serve on committees. But again, we got to figure out how to make sure that this doesn't become, the 100 employee organizations dominating the 1 employee or 5 employee organizations. So,
and I know somebody mentioned, pay for play, but in these early stages, I think it may be worth having a longer conversation from a finance perspective in order to fund all of the things that we know we need to address, while we vet some of the vendors that we want to associate ourselves with. That vendor reputation, I know that we don't want to be a vendor forward organization, and we shouldn't be, but it also affords us more credibility by developing partnerships with well-established enterprise level organizations that are world renowned in their security practices, to give us more credibility.
Well, it's the chicken and the egg. At some point, I would like this organization to have the membership and the stature so that a Microsoft comes to us and says, hey, for whatever, $100,000, we want to be able to say that we support your organization, or that whatever, they get their logo on our site, and we get their logo, they get our logo, basically. Maybe that's all they need. And, but if we have enough status, all those organizations will come and say, hey, we want to support you. We want to support professionalism in this industry.
Yeah, we really have no desire for the vendors to advertise in the organization. That's not what we're about. We don't want and on the flip side, we're not going to promote them and we are not going to rank them. Right? Why they should want to participate in supporting an organization like ours is because a more professional industry is better for them too. Right? And I think the best ones out there do recognize that they
Right.
have, participating in some role. And they, that's why they offer free education programs and free marketing materials. It's not only just that they want to make money from you, it's that they want to make sure that they're working with partners that are going to represent their product and their industry in general in the right way. Right? It's not good for them if there's people that aren't behaving in a professional manner that are out there wagging their business name around either. So I think we have a good selling point there that may be enough.
I agree. Ed, did you have a comment? I see your hand is up. And you're muted. There we go.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to comment on the education survey. The top two choices, I think it may make sense to pretty much integrate into the operation area, because people should not, I would say that people should have the other topics, compliance and things like that, insurance, built into their standard of operation. So that will be part of it, not an afterthought type of thing. So I think that the standards of practices of how you operate your company and how you set it up, how you support your customers should be part of those things to counteract all these legislations and rules that coming down the pipe, should be the whole thing as an integrated thought process.
I think that's part of what we hope to accomplish with the ethics statements, that that we can reach some kind of cohesive message of this. If you're not adhering to these ethics, if you're not willing to put these out and say this is who we are, then that may be an indication that you are not necessarily acting as a professional in your industry.
Right. Rob?
Yeah, just about the one vote per organization. Practically speaking, I guess I just comment, it would be a heck of a lot easier to enforce one vote per membership than it would be per organization. You're gonna have some people who may feel sneaky and sign up twice with multiple organization names. Playing devil's advocate on it a little bit, but if someone wants more votes, they're going to get more votes.
Well, we'll have to address that problem if it shows up. What we have done so far, just so you know, is that if you sign up and pay, and let's just assume you're the owner, and then 3 of your employees sign up and pay, we rebate their money and put them as just basic membership. So they can see things and so forth, but they don't get to vote. They don't get to sit on committees. So.
Yeah, I'm just saying there'll be some effort to make sure that happens that way. I'm not saying the effort is not worth it. It's absolutely worth it.
Yeah, there will be some effort around that. And, to me, that falls into the category of not making a policy based on an exception. We'll have to deal with those exceptions, but in the rule, I think we can have an overall thing, and it is something that we know we're going to have to keep an eye out for. So in the chat, there's discussion about badges, and membership logos and that kind of thing that we could all display on our websites and signatures and such. And yes, that's going to be on the way. That is, you may have noticed that we have a logo. I don't think it's as bad as Carl thinks it is. I thought he did an okay job developing it, but you know, we will get a more professional logo. It will be badged. It will be something that you can proudly display as a member of the organization and begin to use that in your marketing materials to help differentiate you.
Yeah, I intentionally didn't go to a graphics person and say, design a logo for us, because, you know, I wanted to have that be a thing that evolved from the organization. So I created something that is, I consider a placeholder. But, you know, I really would love to have this be something where paid members are allowed to and are eager to put the code of ethics on their website, put the logo in their email signature and on their website, and talk to their clients. And, you know, in fact, part of your, you know, big bundle that you give prospective clients is a page that says, here's our code of ethics, and we're a supporting member of the National Society of IT Service Providers, and here's why. And it, you know, it really will differentiate you from the people who are just, you know, selling licenses and walking away from clients and not providing the services that they've been paid for.
Yep. Now, earlier, I think I was remiss in not properly introducing Heather Johnson, who's on our board. You know, I did introduce her as a board member, but I did not really introduce her as the important role that she's playing on our board as liaison to the committees. So part of our ground up grassroots, if you will, organization here is that the committees are the power center, and they will funnel things that they need the board to take action on through Heather. And Heather's expertise in her previous life before it goes into it is in HR and organizational problem resolution. And so she is the perfect person to do that job. And we're very, very lucky to have her. So thank you, Heather, for taking that on. You rock.
Thank you. Thank you. And it's funny, like I started going to some of those committee meetings, and this should be, you know, everybody should sign up for a committee after I say this, if you haven't already. I was only supposed to kind of attend for the first 5 or 10 minutes and just kind of, you know, see what the temperature is. And I love these committees, and they are really doing things, and they know what they're doing, and they're respectful to each other and each other's opinions. And it's just so exciting that now it's like, when are other people meeting? Like I want to be on all of these committees because they are fun. They are actually fun, and they're doing amazing things. And I'm learning so much from them, and I hope I contribute as well. So I'm thrilled that my fellow board members put me in this position, because I'm having a great time. Lots of hours, but fun hours. So everyone should be in a committee, because let's do great things together, right?
Absolutely. On your second page of your agenda that we handed out at the beginning, if you don't see it, scroll way up in the chat. It's at the top. On that second page is a link to the social media locations that we have set up. They are all brand new, so they're waiting to be populated. So please jump out there and do that. And some of you may also know of the Facebook group that I run, which is called MSP Legislation and Regulation. It is a group off of Third Tier. So if you search for Third Tier's page and it'll list groups, you can join it over there. We have about, I think we're like 2 people, maybe short of 700 over there that are talking about those topics. So although not an official part of this group, I think we did play a little bit of a push to make this group form and happen. So you can join us over there for a discussion on that particular topic.
Also, I'll be posting up some graphics to those places so that you can grab those graphics and share them on your social media. Kind of, we have to create square ones for Instagram, but everything else is the standard wide format. And so even though there's literally 1 pixel difference between what Facebook wants and what LinkedIn wants, it's like, okay, whatever, you guys figure it out. So we have 1 graphic for everything. Steve asked the question, I think it was Steve, about whether we might consider having an annual get together. Well, when the pandemic is over and we have enough money to put on an event, because a national conference is a boatload of money. And it takes massive amounts of coordination. But, if we get the right person who has some skills around putting on something like that, like I do 4-hour events, I do 8-hour events. After seeing what goes into national conferences, I wouldn't take that on without a staff member who knew what the hell they were doing. And so, but that is also a thing that it would be easy to engage vendors. We just need to make sure that it stays IT service provider centric, and the vendors are there to support and not dominate. Because again, we've all seen many organizations that are just gobbled up by the vendors who want to support them. So Ken, did you have a comment or question?
More of a suggestion on the get-togethers, because I'm a huge proponent of that, from a community perspective, but also from a just liking the people, getting to know the people that you're working with on such big things. Maybe we could conduct a poll just initially on conferences, events that our membership base largely attends en masse already. Like Ignite is something that I go to every year, or was before the pandemic. And we could easily tack on to one of those events and just do something informal to start up with. Funding is obviously a huge issue when it comes to these annual get-togethers. So standing on our own 2 feet, I think it'll be a bit before we can get there financially. However, having tickets for sale to attend the in-person event is a great way to help offset that cost. Another way is to insource some of that. I've got contacts for venues where we can host large groups of people that has connectivity that wouldn't charge a high rate, if a rate at all. Other folks may have family connections and hotels and gosh knows what. So I think that a larger conversation around that is something that would definitely fit easily within a committee.
So I do like the idea of, sort of piggybacking on a bigger event, because they will already have set aside meeting rooms and space and and they can add 2 days or 1 day to the conference or whatever. But it's almost like, how some organizations are like, oh, we're going to go to Florida 1 year, and then we're going to go to California, and then we're going to go to Seattle, and then we're going to go to Chicago and New York, right? You got to move it around. I would not want us to necessarily be sponsored by the same very large vendor organization every year, right? And be seen as, because ultimately that's what they would want, right? Is they would want us to be associated only with them and not with their competition. So
I would say more of an informal association. So you're going, if a large portion of our base goes to Ignite every year, just because that's off the top of my head, it wouldn't have to be advertised with Microsoft stuff and we'd be hosting a session. Sure, we could host a session. Sure, we could, associate with them if we chose to at the time. But there's nothing that prevents us from getting together outside the context of Ignite while at Ignite.
That's true. That is absolutely true. And another thing which we didn't really talk about here specifically is that eventually the communications committee is going to want to gather up people who are able to speak at all of these events. If we could have 5 minutes on the stage at every one of the 300 events in this community, that would go a long ways. And so part of that is we need to provide you with materials and handouts. If somebody volunteers to give us a booth, we need to get people to be in the booth and to hand out those materials and eventually
and to be able to talk knowledgeably about what we're doing.
Right. Yeah. And we would give you talking points. Amy's already put together an amazing PowerPoint, and that'll go up in the resources section as well. But eventually we want the communications committee to help produce some of these materials. I think you see that every committee has just an overwhelming amount of work to do. So please be patient with us, that it will take time to actually get these things done, because any one of us could pop up a 7-point bullet point handout, but that doesn't mean that we could say that it actually represents what this organization is for. So these things do need to be discussed and voted on and approved, and and in many ways we're moving forward while at the same time assuming that what we're doing is going to be in line with the mission, vision, and values that we're also moving forward on. So at some point, those things need to come together and mesh well. So it will happen. It will happen. And we are getting there. So I appreciate that. I have a question. When and how frequently, or whatever, when should we meet again like this? In 2 months, in 3 months? I think monthly is too much, unless you're going to give me a bunch of money, but.
And we haven't really talked about this, but as a whole organization, yeah, quarterly seems to be the thing. I mean, it could even be quarterly or even twice a year, right? I think that there may be times when the committees want to get specific input, and we need to make that happen as well.
Well, I mean, we could have a quarter where it's literally each, I don't know how many committees we'll have, but let's say there are six committees. Each committee gets 1/6 of the agenda, and get some feedback, talk about what they're doing, and so forth. That could be a whole meeting in itself.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think that one of the things we need to consider is being able to focus a little bit more effort on those states. I believe that I live in one. This is not self-serving by any stretch of the imagination, but the reality is, at 1 or 2 states take this on and provide some legislation, and then everybody follows suit because, okay, somebody's written,
right.
Here's what needs to be happening. So, and I'll use the cliche, as California goes, so goes the nation.
Yep.
But it's the reality. I think that Louisiana, much to everyone's amazement, kind of took the first swipe at this. But the reality is, I think, some states are going to be more progressive and more motivated to get something done quickly, and we need to perhaps be a little more aggressive in those states where we believe that we're going to see something happen sooner than later.
I agree.
To help our other members have good stuff show up when they basically go, oh yeah, we like California's legislation, we're just going to swipe that and change California to Colorado, and here's your legislation.
Yeah, and that's exactly how it works. I mean, if
I'm
you think
aware.
about New York, Florida, Texas, and California, it's like whatever we do, it literally has to start in one of those 4 states. Luckily, Dennis is in charge of the legislative committee, and he has a good friend who's the chair of the cybersecurity committee in the state legislature. And so we already have some ins there. And, early on, we were joking about how there's a lot of Michigan representation sometimes in our meetings, but there's a lot of California representation on that legislative committee. And I think it makes sense early on, and will probably be the first state where we're able to move, simply because those connections already exist, and Dennis has opened some conversations already. So,
while it's the case, I'll represent Michigan. While it's the case that it is true that they're often lead states in new areas of legislation, we do know that every single state, all 50 states, have cybersecurity items on their docket this season. So this is something that seems to be happening simultaneously everywhere.
Well, one of the things is for anybody who's familiar with the legislative process, there is an organization called the National Conference of State Legislators, NCSL. And I used to work for a legislative tracking organization, and we were a member of NCSL. That is literally a conference of state legislators and all of their staff. And they have not gotten together in person in the pandemic, but they normally meet. They're kind of like CompTIA. They meet in July in the hottest city they can find, where the rooms are cheap. And they exchange like, hey, what are you doing on legislating driverless cars? What are you doing on this? What are you doing on that? And they have a massive website where they exchange with each other the text of the bills that they are trying to lead the nation in. In many ways, we should be grateful that Louisiana was a swing and a miss. Kyle Ardoin was the Secretary of State. He asked the legislature to put together a bill. It only applies to people who are doing business with state agencies, but it's that close to applying to everybody who does business in the state. And it has a definition of MSP and MSSP. Again, not so that you would recognize that as your business, but it does exist in law. Anyway, once again, it's just one of these things where it's going to take more time than any of us wants it to, but we have to do it right. So.
Well, I want to thank everybody for attending today. We're at the 90 minutes that we scheduled, and as I mentioned in the chat, I think a few of us are willing to stay and hang out, and I appreciate everyone who's participated. It's been great conversation, and we're really, really happy to be hearing from the membership. That's really important to the organization, that we know what's on everybody's mind.
And I'll put it in the chat just for fun, but I think everybody knows that you can find me at rlp@smallbizthoughts.com. I'll be happy to take your feedback and comments and questions and suggestions. And if you feel like you've been banging on my door to get appointed to some committee or this or that, I'll be happy to see what I can do to help you. I can't appoint 100 people to 100 things, but I can ask committee chairs to give you a consideration. So. Yeah, so the question about insurers and policyholders. Insurance is a massive area that we also need to address, and we need to make friends with the insurance industry. Otherwise, we might get painted as the enemy.
I did see something recently. Well, we did all get painted as the enemy, and we saw our rates double, triple, quadruple. Some folks didn't even get insured. Big, huge mess in the last couple of years. But I also saw something recently from the insurance industry saying that they think they screwed up, that they were putting that in the wrong place, right? They thought that if they put their regulations and requirements on us, that it would make an impact on the business. And it turns out it didn't. Where they were still losing their money was on the cyber insurance plans that they're providing to businesses, and they didn't make changes to those. So we may see a little rebalancing of the scale, where more of that responsibility to bear the cost of that insurance is going to fall on our
Right.
clients.
Well, somebody mentioned in the chat that some of these insurance companies pay off too quickly, and they may flip the other direction and say, all right, everything is denied first, kind of like workers' comp, and then if you're serious, then just continue to prove it.
Well, part of what's happening there is in the first blows from legislation coming down is that you can't pay the ransom anymore. You might be dealing with a international criminal organization, which would make that illegal from the IRS's point of view.
Right.
And the insurance agencies are getting the same pushback of, we don't want you, you guys should not be out there paying these ransoms. And we don't want that to be part of your cyber insurance policy. So,
Well,
so
but I
there's
mean,
big changes.
even the FBI will say, that's great in theory, but in reality, when the bad guys have your kids,
Right.
you might be paying. Yeah, I mean, you might still pay the ransom.
Yeah.
Part of my approach in the original 9 pillars was, I think that we should be obligated to, if you offer backup and disaster recovery, you should be obligated to offer that to your clients. And if they choose not to pay for that or choose not to buy that, I think you should be able to opt out of being held liable for that network. And the only way to do that is through legislation. You can't sign a deal on a card with your client and say, oh yeah, I'll never sue you or hold you responsible. Clients literally, I just had a meeting earlier this week with, I call her a former client, except that she pays me to do work, so she must be a client. But I did a training for them, and I had her fill out this form of what kind of data they manage and how they handle it, and does it have personally identifiable information? Then it follows these rules. And does it have social security numbers? It follows these rules. And is it personnel related? It follows these rules. And is it related to the board of directors? It follows these rules. And she literally had no idea what I was talking about. She was like, you understand this and I don't. And I'm like, how can you not understand this? If you have the minutes of your association and they're private, then you should not send them in a public email on Gmail to your cousin. I mean, right? But just getting her to fill out the most basic matrix, she doesn't understand it. And so we're kind of caught in this position where we have to educate the clients and then educate the legislators and get the insurance companies to understand somebody has to get these people to do the things that are on that checklist in order to get the cybersecurity insurance. Because right now, part of why the insurance companies have been screwed for the last couple of years is they sold that system to everybody. And you could check, no, I don't have a firewall. No, I don't have antivirus. No, I don't do training. No, 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 no. They would still sell you the insurance. Then you get compromised. They have to pay off. They were selling them like extended warranties. And now they're getting bit in the butt and increasing their rates. That's not your fault, right? That's that company wanted the insurance so they could check a box, and they did nothing to actually secure their networks.
Well, and where I was going to go with that was maybe we need to think about having an insurance committee. I'm not quite sure how we'd go about getting the attention of these insurance companies and the underwriters, because it's all very convoluted, who can talk to who in the insurance industry. But to have a, this is minimum baseline guidance for the insurers, so that you have a mechanism that says, hey, Mr. Insurance Company, you should probably have on your list, and this is a little self-serving for us, admittedly, but you should require, if you're offering insurance to this size organization, that whoever your IT technology partner is should be a member of this group.
Right.
Absolutely. Or that has some bearing on, the risk tolerance that
it gets really, really close to what I'm going to call professional licensure. You have to.
That's where we're headed, I think, anyway.
Yeah. And I think it gets really hairy when you start getting into that space. But in order to get in with those insurers and have those conversations, you almost need to be licensed in order to influence them with some authority.
That's why I say we need to work with the insurance companies. And as was pointed out, Dennis and Keith and the group in the legislative committee have been talking about this with insurance companies, or, they haven't been talking with the insurance companies, been talking about working with the insurance lobbyists and so forth. The good news is that once we get into the state legislature, once we start walking the hallways, we will be introduced to the people we need to talk to with regard to insurance. It's funny because insurance is one of these odd industries where it's so tiered. There are ultimately like 3 insurers in the world, and everybody is a broker and a vendor and a blah, 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 layers and layers of it. So everybody you talk to just says, hey, that sounds great. Let me sell you a plan. And you're like, no, I don't want to talk to you about you selling me a plan. I want to talk to somebody at the level that we can discuss lobbying at the national level. And finding those people is a little harder. So anyway, it's all about building ourselves a seat at the table, right? Cool. All right. Well, I think we're now about 10 minutes overdue. So anything else? Any super important stuff before we go? Thank you all for being here. I appreciate you taking the time. And I know everybody on this call is incredibly busy. So, we appreciate you being here.
Have a great day, everybody.
I'm stopping the recording.